health events. This film is more than a call to action and more than a push for accountability. This film represents what can happen when we properly identify the larger spiritual battle lines and then join forces with those around us to fight for higher Christian principles. When the dark forces of tyranny descended upon us in 2020 and 2021, most of us felt alone. That isolation was not an accident, but one of the primary tactics used to split us up and keep us from supporting one another. After the isolation came the gaslighting, followed by the single largest coercion campaign in history. What should cause everyone deep concern is that what our leaders attempted to execute upon the military is what they planned for the rest of society. They were going to take away individual choice if they could. They intended to end bodily autonomy as they intended the end of all individual rights, particularly those rights that allow us the freedom to worship and fulfill our obligations to God. To God's greater glory, those of us fighting back began to find one another. The foxholes of freedom began to fill with some of the most faithful and fearless heroes I have ever met. Some of my closest friends were made in this fight, and we have since expanded our network and deepened our bonds of trust. You will hear tonight from many of those patriots, people who put everything on the line to choose the difficult right over the easy wrong. You in this room also came to our aid and joined our cause by sharing our stories and providing grassroots evidence to our leaders that we do not stand alone. You are the unsung heroes of this story and part of the ever-growing network of freedom fighters and American patriots. I am of the belief that this network is necessary because those who attempted the tyranny of COVID have not been held accountable. Unless we achieve accountability, it is not a question of if something like this will happen again, but when. Therefore, the challenge is to look around this room and realize that this ready-made network is the safety net God will give us if we can meet Him halfway. Forgive each other, establish communication pathways, provide for the common defense of your neighbor's person and property. This is what we have done for each other in the military, and we are honored to fight alongside you as we expand this remnant within the larger community outside the military. With my deepest gratitude for your support in the bond of Christian fellowship, Robert A. Greene Jr., Commander, United States Navy, 30 June 2026. Thank you for coming, and welcome. Please consider staying afterwards for our Q&A, our question and answer panel with the STARRS leadership. We would really love to have some of your input as well on these matters. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Pam and Children's Health Defense. I mean, what a tremendous effort to put this production together, plus all the work that you're doing. Fantastic on behalf of veterans. And Ron and I were at a panel back in the spring of 2023 down on Academy Boulevard. It was Fervent Church at the time, and we've been corresponding and working kind of informally off and on over the last couple of years. So you saw me in the movie about 20 minutes in, the pandemic planner, the guy in the red tie, who basically, and somebody said, hey, how about ivermectin? Yeah. Okay, and I appreciate being in the movie with Dr. McCullough, but so just a little history real quick. I'll keep it short because everyone has places to go understand. But in 2007, the Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, tasked U.S. Northern Command to build the first ever, it was the DoD Global Pandemic Influenza Synchronization Plan. So there had previously been a Global War on Terror plan, and then they reached down, and of course my boss, the general officer, said, congratulations, Jim, you're the lead. You're going to build this plan. So we brought in all the combatant command planners from across the globe: European Command, Pacific Command, Southern Command, Central Command, and of course, the homeland is what we needed to defend, right? And when you build a pandemic plan, it has a lot to do with logistics, making sure supplies and things are in place. Vaccines were discussed, but when your soldiers and your airmen get sick, you need to treat them. So as we do in pandemic planning and the military, we do multiple ways of making sure that our troops are healthy, they're treated, their families are protected, and then we get them back out in the warfighting business, right? We don't do things like mass lockdowns, shutdowns, those sorts of things. We needed society to be fully operational. We needed our military to be fully operational. So we delivered the first DoD Global Pandemic Plan in 2007 with very little Washington, D.C. guidance. I got some guidance from, planning order, whatever, from the Joint Staff, and some guidance from OSD, and a couple of comments from HHS. Very passive. I don't know, Dr. Fauci or whatever was running that, whoever was running that organization at the time. But again, we built our own plan. And then in 2009, 2010, we had the H1N1 pandemic. And so the first thing we were going to do was to make sure that our troops were taken care of. So there was a plan to roll out antiviral medications, Tamiflu, Relenza, and make sure our troops were taken care of, and then they could get healthy and back out on the battlefield. There's some work being done on a traditional H1N1 vaccine, which was going to take too long. But we were able to exercise and operate that whole pandemic, and we had no mandatory masks, no mandatory vaccines, and no military discharges. So it was just, there's probably some lessons we could use going forward, and so hopefully some of that will get captured. A couple things that I've kind of been working on is, I've been working with, Pam's group, and a lot of these folks in this movie I've met and correspond with. Dr. Teresa Long, I've had some conversations back and forth on X with her, and so what a tremendous asset. And of course, Carolyn Rocco and Rob Green, and just a tremendous number. So I'm in correspondence with them, doing a lot of encouraging, as the old guy, the old retired colonel here, just encouraging them to continue forward in the fight. And they've shown so much bravery as you've seen in this movie. In addition to that, I've been working kind of independently with Colonel Tom Renfrew. You saw him appear in front of Congress and earlier in the movie here. And he's working a lot on reinstatement, just like STARRS. And of course, my topic too is to try to advance some pandemic preparedness, real pandemic preparedness, that has medical freedom choices for what you ought to be able to choose, just like Dr. McCullough said in the movie. In addition, one more thing, there's a book coming out this fall. It's called Urban Legends. The COVID vax injured are not urban legends. It's by Christine Dolan, who previously had been at CNN back in the 80s and started Inside Politics. Investigative reporter. She's going to come out with a tremendous amount of information that is going to roll back a lot of evidence on how all this happened, not only to the military, but to the public as a whole. So she's invited me to be a co-author, and I've added a number of pages in there with my actual story of how a pandemic plan actually comes together, how we went and operated without having to mandate vaccines. And that book is due out, I believe, October, November this fall. Again, I just want to thank you all for coming, and I'll turn it over to Q&A.
Okay, participate. So if any of you want to come down here in this front row, I will give you an opportunity to ask a question on the microphone, and then hand the microphone over to our panelists. And while you're thinking about how you don't want to move, but you really want to ask that question, start coming down. I will fill time by saying we do sell DVDs on all payment options. So the exciting chapter with Children's Health Defense is that we have 3 other films, the VAX series. This is our first film geared towards an adult population. The other films are geared towards vaccines, informed consent with parents and children. And an exciting part of this journey is that this is resonating, and we've started the process through Angel Studios to have this streamed worldwide, which is a new step for us. And since we're in that pending deal, we will not be streaming this film through Children's Health Defense like we stream all our other films for free. So right now, the option is to see it today or to buy a DVD. Now, the DVD also is a great advocacy tool where you can give this to members of Congress, members of the Department of War, people who are decision makers. So while I see a few people have come down, I'm going to say a few more announcements. So if anyone else would like to come down, you have another second to come down. So the DVDs are part of this project. I also want to brag about STARRS, who I recently just met this year. And so Children's Health Defense Military Chapter, we're newish, right? We're coming up on our 3rd year, and we're still very grassroots, whereas the other state chapters have been around for many years. Every state has a Children's Health Defense chapter geared towards parents, parental rights, schools, daycares, colleges, making sure everyone knows their exemption rights, and impacting your state legislature. I've been a part of that for many years here in Colorado. But as a new chapter, we do not have the reach and the influence that our friends at STARRS have. And I have just gotten a glimpse of what they are capable of doing. They are capable of showing up in DC for our special screening for Congress and then saying, well, we just walked into Undersecretary Tata's office today and let him know that there's a lot to be done here. So they get that, whereas I spent a whole morning going up all the flights of Congress, and I got into 2 offices and I talked to a staffer. So they have that type of influence, and we're so grateful that they're using it on behalf of our service members. And as soon as I found out about this film project, they were, how can we help you? All of their resources with legal and marketing, and we're just very grateful. Everyone in this film is very grateful to you. So thank you so much. We have with us tonight, we have a gubernatorial candidate, Greg Lopez, who's running as an independent, and he would like to ask a question to our panel.
First of all, let me just say that I think I met STARRS a couple of years ago up in Summit County. And so I am a veteran, and so when I saw this film, as you can imagine, it really touched my heart about our brothers and sisters in uniform and what they had to go through. Because I remember going through basic, and you didn't ask questions, right? You just took the vaccines. But I'm also a former congressman. I just came back from the 118th, so I want to offer whatever assistance I can. But one of the questions that popped into my head was, how can governors help get this message across? Because as you know, in the state, the governor is the commander-in-chief of also the reserves. So is there a way that you would say that the voice of a governor can help get the ear of Congress or of the president so that we can start mobilizing in that fashion?
It's a great but tricky question. Governor, as the president, represents the executive. And what we've discovered at the national level is a lot has been done at the executive level. Day one, when President Trump took office, he issued many executive orders. And the very first one dealt with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we felt very gratified that of the several hundred executive orders that were issued, that was his #1 top priority. So they have an important voice, and obviously they control the administrative branch of the government. And so they can influence the types of policies and programs that would even think about promoting these types of things to cease and desist. But it needs to be codified still. Mm-hmm. It takes leadership. Obviously the governor does that, but you still got to get the state legislature to enact the legislation to codify it and to make it permanent and not transitory. General, any thoughts on that?
Oh, that's good, thanks.
All right, we have another question or comment.
Guys, for being here. My name's Richard Heckman. I'm a physician. I was fired for not vaccinating, so I kind of felt pretty emotional hearing some of these stories. happened here in this state. But I have a question about that PACT legislation that's being proposed. On this informed consent form, does it make affirmatively explicit that your duty station, your rank, your promotability, whatever the jargon is that the military uses, will not be affected by your decision? Because I think without that explicit safeguard in the back of the mind of the, recruit PFC, the junior ranks especially, who don't have any sense of what kind of rights they may have, the paper may not mean a lot. So that's my question. Is that in the document, or can it be put in the document?
We're talking about the PACT Act and the VA's policy of not recognizing vaccine injuries. Who would like to respond to that?
I'll start, yeah. Two different things there. That's a great point. The first is in what we propose regarding informed consent, I don't think that's there, but that's something we're going to take back and look at, because you make a great point about, well, if I sign this as private such and such, that I don't want to take this vaccination, is that then going to hurt me career-wise? That's really what you're saying. And yeah, that's something we'll try to add in there. Super, thank you. It's not really part of the PACT Act. It's two different things.
We have another question over here.
My name's Jim Stellick, and first of all, I would like to say that I've been following Children's Health Defense since RFK first started it a long time ago, and I thank you for all the information that has helped me struggle through this issue all those years. And I've kept following this and hearing all the wonderful proposals that have come out to try to prevent something like this from happening again. My degree is in psychology. So my question, if I get to it, is that there's something that we aren't talking about very much. The implementation of this policy happened on many different levels. There were people who implemented that have done things that they probably knew weren't correct either. I wish that we'd have a movie, or at least part of a movie, that had some of those people in it to explain how they managed to do what they did to people who were innocent, to people who were powerless, to people who were in the military. Because I don't think we're ever going to get this right until we understand how that happened on all those various levels. Is there anything going on that you know of to bring people in who, let's say a nurse who gave a shot 1,000 times a day and knew there was something wrong there? Well, why was that not her duty to disobey?
Yeah, that's good.
Why wasn't a doctor's duty to disobey?
Yeah.
All the way up that chain, there were people who did things to cause victims to happen. I remember listening to Peter Corey talk about ivermectin, and they totally ignored him. And that their ignorance was on so many different levels. Why aren't people who did that explaining how they managed to rationalize what they did? We could talk about the victims for a long time, but we need to also talk about the perpetrators. Otherwise, we'll never stop it from happening again. That's my feeling.
So we're talking about accountability. We have chaplains were involved in violating rights. We have doctors were violating rights. Lawyers, JAG were involved. Commanders. How do we address this?
Our senior military got used to the political correctness that was being forced in the 1990s. That's how they grew up in this system, the leaders of today and those days. They grew up in this political correct environment. That's what they knew. That's how they got promoted.
Reconciling message here.
A what?
The reconciling message.
Reconcile.
Okay, so it looks like the last question, piggybacking what General Arbuckle just talked about, we are now very much aware of tremendous tension in our
Closer to that, right?
we are aware of tremendous tension in our country. There are people that believe in America and there are people that want to change America, and in not good ways. And so we say you can have two individuals that claim to be pro-American. John is pro-American because he embraces our founding principles, our Constitution, Declaration, Bill of Rights. But Susie says she's pro-American because she imagines a future utopia where everybody's equal. But that requires change, and it tends to be coercive. That's what we're dealing with today. And so the reconciliation here is to educate people on what we have and should be grateful for and ready to fight for it, to preserve it for our children and grandchildren at all levels, top all the way down to the worker bee. So we have put together a presentation called The American Creed, Threatened by Radical Indoctrination. And so if you go to our website, stars.us, on the home page, if you look at the right column, you'll see an icon that talks about the American Creed presentation. And the one displayed is the one that General Arbuckle and I presented in Pueblo about 3 months ago at the Center for American Values. I mean, can you think of anything any more symbolic than that? The Center for American Values. And so we presented that message in this room that was adorned by portraits of Medal of Honor winners.
Oh, wow.
I mean, all around the room, Medal of Honor winners who fought for what our nation is all about, the American Creed. And so you don't have to wear the uniform to do that. And so even though STARRS was started by retired senior military officers, it's open to all Americans who want to fight and preserve our American Creed. So if you get a chance to watch that presentation and you see opportunities where we can give that to other groups, other audiences, we would be honored to do that. We don't charge. We just kind of expect some hospitality. That's about it. So anyway, and I know General Arbuckle, really, he kicks it off and he wraps it up. He's got the bookends on that presentation. He is delegated, because he's senior, he's delegated the threatened part to me. So I get to talk about Marxism, critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, so that hopefully you don't hate me because I'm the messenger, but you resonate with the message. And then General Arbuckle wraps it up by reminding us what we can do about it. And there's a lot of good things we can do about it. So, General?
Were there any more questions? Oh, a couple more. We hold up. We have time. I'm bringing to the microphone. Yes, we do.
I'm Dee Valdez Pepper, and we have an organization called We the People, and we're an educational organization, and we will have you come twice. We'd like to come show the film and then do a panel afterwards. But we'll have you come and speak about the American Creed presentation as well. So thank you for that. And I do agree with Jim. Everyone is accountable for the decisions they made before God. Every single person, regardless of how big or small their position is. Every single one of us is responsible, and not until we banish that spiral of silence will the communities change that we live in, and that will the military change. We have to recognize people who had the courage to stand up. And not just in a film. They have to be recognized on a very big stage because they had the courage. And it'll give other people the courage to stand up, regardless of how big or small they are. So that's my comment. I apologize for that. But two questions. How many lives have been restored under Trump? How many military people's positions and back pay and all of that has been restored? That's the first question.
I'll give a quick answer. Out of the 100,000 that left, 8,000 you heard in the media that were discharged. There was approximately another 96,000 that left to avoid court-martial. 150 have been restored. The main reason, let me repeat that, 150 individuals out of 100,000 have been restored. The public does not know that. That's where this comes into play. We need public pressure to push this bureaucracy to restore. Many of those people will not return until there's accountability. People are charged for a crime. You heard the Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War, say, and our president say, we offer you an apology. An apology is not justice for a crime. People lost their livelihoods and their lives. That is not justice when a crime is committed. In our legal system, under UCMJ, if you commit a crime, you are tried for a crime. And that is what 100,000 people are waiting for. In your second question.
And the second question is, what kind of fallout is expected from Pete Hegstaff for this, because this movie has been shown at 150 different locations all around the United States tonight. So what kind of fallout are they expecting?
I will, to the gentleman who just walked into the Undersecretary's office, maybe hand it off to one of you, what you think is happening in Tata's office.
Okay, I wasn't there, but part of the process. It was a very cordial meeting with our STARRS, chairman of the board of directors, our legal counsel, our vice chairman. Also, we're linked up with another organization of retired senior military. It's called the MacArthur Society of the West Point Graduates. They had a representative there. And we're also linked up with the Naval Academy, but they were not present. The answer is it was very cordial. I think it was about a 45-minute meeting. The Undersecretary for Personnel Readiness, who I mentioned earlier, is responsible for implementing all these actions that we're talking about bringing military people back on board, the 8,500 and the 95,000. That's his office that does that. Some of the people that you saw up here in the film are involved in that right now. Casey Dixon is one of those. In addition, Dr. Teresa Long is working. She's been detailed out of the Department of War by Secretary Hegseth over to HHS to work on basically looking at the databases of doing a forensic analysis of those people that were harmed by the vaccination while on active duty. So she's working for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. doing that right now.
This was blocked from Facebook and Instagram for like 5 years, and we are back on Facebook and Instagram.
Is it on the end of the DVD if we purchase the DVD?
Yes,
so it'll be on there too. My name is John Kuchera, and I'm a family physician, functional medicine doc, and involved with several of these incidents of medical freedom when it comes to the COVID. Certainly saw people fight and had to fight with pharmacists to get ivermectin out to people. Is it still on? Oh, okay. But Pam knows very well that this issue is, it goes a lot further, and the military have seen this now in a wholesale manner, but our children have been damaged in the same way by the vaccines. And she knows this personally. She knows that I know it. And I'm concerned that the same thing is happening in our schools, the coercion by school boards, by teachers. It's, it's part of the DEI kind of initiative where they take control and say the parents do not have the rights. We have the rights to indoctrinate with the truth according to their idea of truth. They are free to act with religious or medical freedom, whatever, to get this done. And if the parents with autism are freedom fighters too, and could work with the military, and we could unite citizens in the public sector and the military, we could make some inroads, because I think our time is limited where we can be effective. If we don't do this, if we don't make those corrections in these next couple of years, it's not going to happen.
Let me get your input, panel, on the timeline. I know people I work with about influencing DC and the president and the secretary of the Department of War. They're very concerned that we have a very narrow window here, not just in this administration, but up until midterms. We've seen some staff members go, and there's a lot of concern that we're under the gun. We have a short window of time to put some permanent changes in place.
The deep bureaucracy. Last week I had lunch with an individual that was on the faculty at the Air Force Academy when President Trump issued his executive order to cease and desist CRT and DEI. This was in September of 2020. The permanent professors and department heads came out of that meeting with the dean, basically saying they're going to ignore that executive order. Can you believe that?
Yes, I believe it. Yeah.
Now, and these are superiors over cadets. Now, what kind of an example are they setting? Holy smokes. So we're going to try to get the academy, the Air Force Academy, and hopefully West Point, Annapolis, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine, to sort of have a primer for entering students, cadets and midshipmen. So before they arrive, we already primed them on two important concepts: character and the Constitution. Yeah. So when you drive around the Air Force Academy campus, you see building leaders of character. And I kept reminding my classmate, John Regney, when he was a superintendent, you know, there's good and bad character. So shouldn't we distinguish that we're building leaders of good character? Yeah. Because they understand what we're getting at. And then I hear this from this faculty member about what the dean at the academy and the permanent professors and department heads have decided.
Are free to act with religious or medical freedom, whatever, to get this done. And if the parents with autism are freedom fighters too, and could work with the military, and we could unite citizens in the public sector and the military, we could make some inroads, because I think our time is limited where we can be effective. If we don't do this, if we don't make those corrections in these next couple of years, it's not going to happen.
Let me get your input, panel, on the timeline. I know people I work with about influencing DC and the president and the secretary of the Department of War are very concerned that we have a very narrow window here, not just in this administration, but up until midterms. We've seen some staff members go, and there's a lot of concern that we're under the gun. We have a short window of time to put some permanent changes in place.
The deep bureaucracy. Last week I had lunch with an individual that was on the faculty at the Air Force Academy when President Trump issued his executive order to cease and desist CRT and DEI. This was in September of 2020. The permanent professors and department heads came out of that meeting with the dean, basically saying they're going to ignore that executive order. Can you believe that?
Yes, I believe it. Yeah.
Now, and these are superiors over cadets. Now, what kind of an example are they setting? Holy smokes. So we're going to try to get the academy, the Air Force Academy, and hopefully West Point, Annapolis, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine, to sort of have a primer for entering students, cadets and midshipmen. So before they arrive, we already primed them on two important concepts: character and the Constitution. Yeah. So when you drive around the Air Force Academy campus, you see building leaders of character. And I kept reminding my classmate, John Regney, when he was a superintendent, you know, there's good and bad character. So shouldn't we distinguish that we're building leaders of good character? Yeah. Because they understand what we're getting at. And then I hear this from this faculty member about what the dean at the academy and the permanent professors and department heads have decided from that. We're insulated from it. And there's far too much of that happening. And so we've seen it, and we're doing something about it. And so each of us has a voice. There's so many different avenues. General Arbuckle's Flag Officers for America, which is a very powerful platform. It's not incorporated or anything. This is a group of retired generals and admirals that are expressing their voice on issues that are contrary to our Constitution and our way of life. It takes courage to do that, and they sign their name to it. So we've got a huge problem in America. It's cultural, and the only way we can defeat it is through education, to counter the indoctrination that's taking place. It's the risk that we have to take to lose those types of associations to promote what we think is summum bonum, the ultimate good. And our Constitution and Declaration of Independence have grounded us on that path. So,
A comment on that one. Yeah, that's good. You triggered an idea with me that we'll try to take back to Department of War, and that is there is a task force that's looking at exactly how not to let another COVID situation occur again. And part of that would be education of the entire military, from the day they walk in as privates and all the way up through the chain of command, to educate them on what happened with the COVID vaccination, EUA, and what their legal rights are regarding that, informed consent, as well as DEI also. And the point about this stuff being deeply embedded, as my point earlier was, it started in the 90s with this political correctness. Yeah, that's what the senior leaders right now in our military have grown up with, so that's what they're used to. And what happened with day one when President Trump put out his executive orders and Secretary Hegseth his memos to get rid of DEI out of the military, well, that did happen fast. All the physical stuff that was out there, the offices, the people in the offices, all the websites, all the propaganda, that was taken down. But the real problem is between the ears of people that still sort of buy into that. And that's the tough nut to crack, and frankly, in my opinion, it's going to take some time just to wash them out of the system. Yogi Berra, you know who Yogi Berra was, right? Great New York catcher back in the 1950s. Yeah, right. Mickey Mantle and all those back then. Yeah. He was a great philosopher, and Yogi had something to say about DEI. And this is a true saying, but probably not about DEI. Yogi said, you know, getting rid of DEI out of the military is easy. It's 90% physical, and the other half is mental.
Mine is really more of a comment on what has been touched on earlier. When it comes to, yes, people on the top are absolutely responsible. But when you look at 100,000 people in military who stood up and said, no, this is wrong, I don't want to have this vaccine. They had character, they had stamina, they had courage, and I do think from the top, yes, but all the way down, once it was clear there's something going on, I understand recognizing like, oh my gosh, we have a crisis, oh, let's get these vaccines and to save people. But once it became clear, well, there's something not adding up here, and we're seeing risk factors and we're seeing things happening. From there, yes, people who continued to give the vaccines and to continue to apply pressure and shame people and force them, coerce them to continue to have these vaccines. I do think there's some accountability and some responsibility there, because here we have all these courageous people who are no longer in the military, and all of the manipulators and the weak individuals who couldn't even stand up to it are still in the military. I think there's an imbalance of power, 100%.
We had 5 senior advisors to the Department of War attend in their official capacity, which we think is a pretty big deal. And I asked for 2 very, what we call 10-meter targets.
I want to see what that's all about. We wrote a position paper on that very topic and took it back to Congress. That was about the 8th and 10th of June earlier this month. It's on our website. We'll leave my comments with on a positive note. We had the greatest recruiting crisis 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that we've had since the volunteer military was established in 1973. Everything went in the tank. Services couldn't meet their objectives. It was bad. The Army had to reduce its end strength because of it. And that's dangerous stuff from a warfighting standpoint. Fast forward to now, with the elimination of DEI and the focus on meritocracy, warfighting readiness, and lethality that Secretary Hegseth is pushing. And this year, all the services have met or exceeded their recruiting goals already. Now that's a huge indicator. Turn around. So the message is out. People understand it. They're coming back into the military for the reasons that they come in the first place, and that's to serve our nation and not get caught up in this political correctness crap. So that's really good news, and I'd like for you to leave with that in mind, in spite of this stuff we're talking about that does need to be corrected. The ship is turning around, is my message to you, that those who refuse to take the vaccination were extremists, and it was okay if they left. That's my thought.
And that is validated by many of the impacted members in comparison. So we're talking about loving our neighbor, even people we don't agree with. I'll give you a comparison point. We know how to deal with people who are not medically qualified in the armed services. On one hand, you have people who would not take an experimental drug that were physically fit and healthy and strong, and 100,000 of them left with a less than honorable discharge. That is not okay. On the other side, you have thousands of transgender individuals who medically disqualified themselves, whether we agree with their choice or not, and they were put on leave. They've been on leave for over a year, paid leave, and they will all leave with their benefits in an honorable discharge. So take those two data points, and when you go out for the 4th of July, the 4th of July starts right here in our hearts. And you talk about this with your friends and neighbors, and you tell them what is going on in this country, and that everyone in this room has a role to play in making it right and getting this country back on track for the country that we all love. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for being here.